The glove appeared in the snow on a morning when the mountains were too quiet, as if they were holding back a secret. It lay just beyond the crooked wooden steps of her porch, half buried in a crust of frost, fingers stiff and reaching toward nothing. For a second, Anna thought it was trash blown up from the road. Then her dog trotted out of the trees, breath white in the cold, and nudged the glove carefully with his nose, pushing it closer to her boots like a fragile offering. He sat, watching her, as if waiting for her to understand. Mountain Woman, they called her in town, like she didn't have a name of her own. But up here she was simply Anna, a tired woman in a worn sweater and patched pants, trying to survive another winter with a dog and a wood stove that coughed more than it burned. She stepped out into the brittle air, mug of weak coffee warming one hand, and stared at the glove. Black leather, small, almost new under the frost. Her stomach tightened without knowing why. Her dog's ears tipped forward, tense, reading her unease. She crouched slowly, joints protesting, and reached for the glove. The leather was stiff with cold, but intact. No tears, no chew marks, no sign that Runo had played with it. He had carried it here carefully, jaws gentle, like he did with injured birds or lost things. Anna turned it over and saw them, the tiny stitched blue flowers near the wrist. Faded, but unmistakable. Her breath snagged. The posters had shown those flowers. The posters from 5 years ago, curling on shop windows, flapping on bus stops. 2 missing girls. 2 sisters. One of them had worn these gloves. For a long moment, she just knelt there, snow biting through her pants, glove resting in her palm like a piece of someone else's nightmare. The mountains around her felt suddenly closer, the tree line leaning in, the pale sky sinking lower. Runo shifted, whining softly, nose brushing her shoulder. "Where did you get this?" she whispered, though she knew he couldn't answer in words. He only blinked, steady and alert, as if to say, "I found it, and you need to see." Grief, she thought, had settled like old ash stirred restlessly inside her ribs. Inside the cabin, the air was warmer, but no less sharp. She set the glove on the rough table by the window, beside a cracked mug and a small pile of tools. It looked small there too, but not harmless. Runo paced once in a tight circle, then lay between the door and table as if guarding both her and what he'd brought. Anna dragged a chair closer and sat, hands folded uselessly in her lap. Memories rose uninvited, search parties in bright jackets, helicopters thudding over the ridges, the girl's mother standing in this doorway begging, "Have you seen them? Anything at all?" Anna had told the truth then. She hadn't seen the girls, only strangers' headlights far below, the glow of the town's grief reflecting against the clouds. She remembered the mother's eyes, raw and shining, trimmed with broken sleep, and the father standing behind her like a wall cracking from the inside. The glove on the table made that day feel like yesterday. Carefully, she picked it up again, running her thumb over the stitching. It wasn't moldy or rotten, like something lost for years. It felt recent, as if it had only just found its way free of whatever had held it. Her mind searched for ordinary explanations because they were safer than the others. Maybe a hunter found it and dropped it. Maybe kids from town had come up here poking around where they shouldn't, scattering ghosts. Maybe she was wrong, and this wasn't the same glove at all, just one that looked painfully similar. But she remembered details. Grief made you memorize things you didn't want to know. Those flowers, that exact curve of the wrist. Her chest ached with the certainty. "Why now?" she murmured. 5 years of silence, and suddenly the mountain left this on her steps. Runo got to his feet as if he'd been waiting for the question. He paced to the door, looked back at her, then nosed the wood, claws ticking softly on the floor. A clear invitation. Anna's fingers tightened around the glove. It was early still, light, thin, and pale. The kind of morning when the cold cut clean, but the wind hadn't fully sharpened its teeth. She slipped the glove into her pocket like contraband, shrugged on her heavy jacket, wrapped a scarf twice around her neck. The dog's eyes brightened. He liked movement, purpose, trails. Outside, the snow told its own quiet story. She saw only Runo's tracks leading toward the tree line, and then back again, looping once near the porch, where he'd dropped the glove. No other prints, no sign of people, no tire marks, no cigarette butts, nothing. The world looked untouched in a way that felt unkind. "Show me," she said, voice low. Runo trotted ahead, cutting a narrow path through the crust, head down, tail level. Anna followed, boots crunching, breath puffing in uneven clouds. The cabin shrank behind her, disappearing into the white and dark. She knew these slopes intimately, every twisted pine and leaning rock, every place where snow formed deceptive overhangs above hidden hollows. She had walked them in storms and sunlight, alone and with Runo, searching for fallen branches, checking traps, listening to the mountain's moods. Today it felt like walking into a conversation she hadn't been invited to, only summoned after words had already been spoken. Runo led her toward a stand of firs, their branches heavy with old snow, needles dark and wet. The air there held a different cold, stiller, as if sound moved reluctantly. The dog stopped at the edge of a shallow drift and began pawing at the snow, deliberate, focused. Anna slowed, heart stumbling in her chest. "Runo," she warned softly. "Careful." But he was careful, scraping away only the top layer, exposing something darker beneath. She crouched again, knees protesting, and brushed aside the loosened snow. A scrap of fabric emerged, frozen stiff into the ground, its red dulled by ice and time. Her hand hovered above it, fingers twitching. The younger sister, Mila, had worn a red scarf in the photo, or a red jacket. Her memory blurred, but the color still hurt. She swallowed, the taste of iron rising in her mouth. It could be anything, she told herself. Hikers left things, hunters, tourists. The mountains collected bits of human life all the time and buried them without ceremony. But the glove in her pocket felt heavier with every breath, and the red beneath her hand felt too much like confirmation. Runo whined quietly, leaning his shoulder into her arm. "All right," she whispered. "I see it." She couldn't dig more. Not like this, not alone, not with her bare hands and a dog and a history of not being believed. Slowly, with a care that felt almost like apology, she covered the fabric with snow again, leaving it undisturbed, but not forgotten. She snapped a small branch from the nearest tree and stabbed it upright beside the spot, a fragile marker in a wide, white world. Her fingers burned as feeling fought its way back into them. She straightened, head spinning slightly. 5 years ago, she'd tried to tell an officer about a man loitering near the bus stop, eyes too hungry on the missing girl's posters. The tip had been written down, buried under 100 others. Then, forgotten. She had swallowed that dismissal, added it to the list of reasons she preferred the company of wind and pine over people who didn't listen. Now the mountain itself seemed to hand her proof, bypassing everyone else. It terrified her. It also felt like responsibility, heavy and choking. Runo nudged her leg, as if to remind her there was still a way forward. Anna looked back toward the direction of the cabin. She could pretend this never happened. She could burn the glove, forget the red, let the snow do what it always did, cover, soften, silence. She already knew she wouldn't. The walk back felt shorter and longer at once. Her legs moved on the memory, but her thoughts lagged behind, stumbling over possibilities. What if she called and they dismissed her again? What if they didn't, and everything old exploded into the present? Cameras, questions, suspicion. Mountain woman bringing the ghost back down to town. What if she was wrong, and she tore open wounds for nothing? And worst of all, what if she was right, and these pieces were all that remained of two children who had once laughed into a camera, pulling gloves high over skinny wrists? Inside, the cabin felt too small for what she carried now. The glove went back onto the table, a dark, obedient thing. Runo lay down but didn't relax, his eyes following her every movement. She paced the length of the room, counting steps without meaning to. 4 from door to stove, 3 from stove to bed, 6 from bed to window. Distance had never felt more useless. On the shelf by the door, her phone lay where she always left it, screen dark, waiting. It still felt like an intruder in her mountain life, but it was hers, reluctantly claimed. Her hand shook slightly as she picked it up, thumb waking the screen. She almost dialed a familiar private number first, a man in town who hired her sometimes to fix roofs, but stopped. This wasn't something to whisper to one person. This was something that either had to be official or had to be buried. The emergency number sat at the top of the contacts she never used. Her reflection in the black screen looked older than she felt, lines etched by wind and winters and loneliness. 5 years, she whispered to herself. Long enough to decide nothing would ever change. She pressed the numbers anyway. The ring snapped the room into a different kind of quiet, one that hummed with distance and wires and listening ears far away. When the dispatcher answered, her tongue felt too big in her mouth. I think I found something from the missing girls, she managed, voice rough. Silence, then professional calm. Questions came. Name, location, what exactly she had found, how she knew. As she spoke, the glove on the table seemed to grow, looming in her peripheral vision. When the dispatcher repeated her name, there was a pause. You're the woman who lives up there, right? Anna waited for judgment, mockery, boredom. None came, only the soft tapping of keys and the steady spiral of questions, sorting her story into something dispatch could understand. We're sending a team, the voice finally said. Stay where you are if it's safe. Keep the item secure. Can you do that? Anna looked at the glove, at Runo, at the snow-dim light through the window. Her cabin had never felt safer and more exposed at the same time. Yes, she said quietly. We'll be here. When the call ended, the silence that returned wasn't empty. It was thick, waiting. She expected to feel relief. Instead, dread settled deeper, like cold finding its way through layers of clothing. Runo rose and came to her, pushing his head under her hand until her fingers curled into his fur on instinct. We did the right thing, she told him, though part of her wasn't sure if she believed it yet. The minutes stretched, elastic and strange. She reheated old coffee and forgot to drink it. She added wood to the stove and watched ash tumble in lazy spirals. Outside, the mountains carried on, wind shifting, snow sliding, ravens calling from invisible perches. When the knock finally came, it was almost gentle, 3 measured taps on the wooden door. Runo barked once, sharp and protective, then fell silent at her quiet, easy. Anna opened the door to a spill of pale light and the sight of 2 uniformed officers on her narrow porch. One she recognized from town, Officer Tasev, younger, always a little awkward when he had to talk to her at the market. The other was a woman older than both of them, with tired, steady eyes and lines carved deep around her mouth. "Anna?" the older one asked softly. "Yes," Anna said, though it felt like a small word for everything she carried. "I'm Inspector Velkova," the woman continued. "We spoke on the phone. May we come in?" There was something in her tone, respect, maybe, that Anna hadn't expected. She stepped aside. The cabin seemed to shrink around their boots and thick jackets. Runo sniffed them carefully, tail low but not unfriendly, then settled near the stove where he could see everyone. Velkova's gaze moved quickly, noting the lean shelves, the patched chair, the glove on the table. Her eyes paused there, expression tightening almost imperceptibly. "Is that it?" she asked, approaching slowly, as though the glove might bolt. Anna simply nodded. Velkova took out a pair of thin evidence gloves and pulled them on, the snap of latex loud in the still room. She lifted the glove, turned it under the weak light, and exhaled through her nose. "I remember these," she murmured. Laura loved showing off those flowers. Wouldn't stop talking about how her aunt had ordered them specially. The detail wasn't in any report. It belonged to a part of Velkova that still carried case numbers as names and birthdays. Tasev scribbled notes, glancing between the glove and Anna. "You're certain your dog brought it today?" he asked. "You haven't seen it around before? No visitors?" "I don't get visitors," Anna replied quietly, "and I walk this clearing every day. It wasn't here. This morning it was." She felt Velkova studying her, weighing words against posture, against the years of silence she'd chosen. "You also mentioned torn red fabric," the inspector said. "Up the slope." Anna described the place as best she could, the bent fur, the shallow dip, the feel of the air there. As she spoke, their faces changed. The casual caution in their eyes sharpened into something more focused. Tasev sketched a rough map in his notebook, asking for distances and directions, anchor points only someone who lived here would notice. Velkova listened without interruption. "Only sometimes he and Siane." "Show me again with your hands, to picture the angle of the slope, the depth of the snow." When Anna finished, the inspector nodded slowly. "We'll need to see it," she said. "Today, before the weather turns, or the snow shifts." Her gaze softened just a fraction. "Will you come with us? You and the dog? It'll be easier with you pointing the way." Anna's first instinct was to refuse, to draw a line at her door and say, "I've done my part. Take it from here." But the thought of them stumbling around up there, misreading the mountain's small warnings, made her skin crawl. It wasn't arrogance. It was knowledge. This land had moods, and it punished those who ignored them. She glanced at Runo. His ears were already pricked forward, body taut with anticipation. He knew there was more work to do. "We'll come," she said, surprising herself with how steady her voice sounded. "But you listen to me up there, to what the ground is saying." Velkova's mouth twitched as if she wanted to smile but remembered the story they were walking into. "Agreed," she said simply. "We'll listen." They left the cabin not long after, the sky already thickening, light turning that flat winter silver that made distances slippery. A second vehicle waited lower down the track, with 2 more officers and a mountain rescuer in bright orange gear, his pack heavy with ropes and poles. Radios crackled softly, codes and coordinates traveling between cold hands. Anna stood a little apart at first, feeling the old urge to shrink back into trees, to watch from behind the safety of bark and distance. Runo stayed glued to her side, his body a steady, living weight against her leg. When they began climbing, the world narrowed to breath and snow and the crunch of boots. Anna led when the path steepened, her feet finding the safer lines almost unconsciously, instinct guiding her around places where wind carved hollows beneath innocent-looking crusts. Velkova followed close behind, listening when Anna said, "Not there," or pointed to a subtle sag in the white. No one questioned. No one laughed at her warnings. That alone felt strange enough to loosen something tight in her chest. Runo moved ahead in sweeping arcs, nose low, tail a metronome of purpose. At the stand of firs, the air shifted again, quieter somehow, as if the mountain itself were watching. "Here," Anna said, touching the bent trunk she'd used as a marker. Runo trotted to the drift and began pawing almost exactly where he had before, snow spraying gently from his paws. The rescuers moved in, more careful now, clearing the top layer of snow with gloved hands and small shovels. The red emerged slowly, brighter in contrast to the white, a cruel echo of youth. Someone hissed air between their teeth. The scrap was gathered, photographed, bagged. No one called it coincidence. "Keep him loose," the rescuer in orange said quietly, nodding at Runo. "Let's see what else he tells us." At Velkova's nod, Anna unclipped the leash. Runo paused, taking in the wind, then moved off, not running, but sweeping, casting back and forth across the slope with a focus that made everyone's shoulders stiffen. They gave him space, following, but not crowding. The snow underfoot changed, firmer, then oddly hollow sounding. Anna felt it through her boots and called out, "Spread out. Don't bunch. The ground's different here." They obeyed, fanning into a loose arc, eyes on the dog. Runo stopped near a shallow dip where the snow seemed to sink just a little more than anywhere else. He barked once, a sharp sound that bounced off the stone. Then he whined, pawing gently at the surface, as if afraid to break something delicate. The rescuer moved forward, pole in hand, probing the snow. It slid deeper than it should have, then met resistance that wasn't rock. His face changed. "We've got something," he said quietly. The air tightened. They kicked into another rhythm, measured, ritualistic. Shovels, poles, careful hands, slow work. Snow came away in blocks and handfuls, revealing shadows below. At first it was shapes, colors, the suggestion of what might be. Then bone, a sleeve, a boot, cracked but still holding its shape. The world seemed to pull back, sound dimming except for the scrape of plastic and fabric, and the soft, involuntary exhale someone made when the truth finally touched daylight. Anna's knees weakened. She gripped a branch until the bark bit into her palm. 5 years of imagining monsters, of seeing dark figures between trees, collapsed into something simpler, almost cruel in its indifference. A slip, a fall, the mountain's ordinary hunger, not a human hand. "Stop here," Velkova said, voice low but firm. "We call for forensics. No more digging until they're on site." Radios came alive, coordinates relayed, words like remains and possible victims from case 0472, spoken with professional calm that didn't match the glassiness in anyone's eyes. They stepped back, forming a loose ring around the partially uncovered forms, giving them space as if they might still breathe. Snow drifted lazily down, landing on dark fabric and pale shapes, melting slowly with the faint warmth still held by the earth. Runo pressed himself against Anna's leg, silent now, ears pinned back. The forensic team arrived with a kind of quiet gravity, their movements practiced, respectful. They did not rush. They measured, photographed, marked. They spoke in low tones not meant for anyone's comfort, only for clarity. Angles, approximate heights, the way the snowpack had shifted over years. One of them studied the lip of the slope, where the ground dropped away, sharply just a little further down, and shook his head. "Overhang probably gave way," he said to Velkova. "Cornice, weak layer underneath. They step too close, it goes. They're gone. Avalanche buries them. Settles. No one sees." "Any sign they weren't alone?" Velkova asked, though Anna could hear the answer already in the terrain. The technician glanced up, eyes sweeping the scene, then the partially excavated forms. He shook his head slowly. "No bindings, no secondary trauma that screams assault, no camp remnants. This looks like bad luck, and bad decisions maybe. Wrong place, wrong step, wrong day." The words slotted into place inside Anna like stones in a wall. Wrong step. Wrong day. For years she'd imagined screaming, chasing, violence hidden in ravines. The mountain had done it with silence, one collapsing slab of snow. As they worked, other small things surfaced. A crushed phone, long dead. Metal teeth of a zipper. The fragment of a bracelet she remembered from the posters. Tiny beads dulled with time. Each piece was documented, held gently, then placed into numbered bags. All the evidence the mountain was willing to surrender now that it was finished keeping its secrets. Anna found herself staring not at the remains, but at Runo. He sat carefully beside her, eyes flicking between faces, reading tension the way he usually read weather. She dropped a hand to his fur, fingers twisting into warmth. Hours later, as gray deepened toward violet, they began the descent with the stretcher. It moved slowly, supported by many hands, wrapped tight, anonymous, heavier than its weight. They would separate, examine, assign names later. For now, it was shared gravity. No one spoke much. The mountain's path down felt steeper under the burden of what they carried. Anna walked ahead with Runo, clearing steps, calling back warnings when ice showed through thin snow. Behind her, she could hear the uneven rhythm of boots and labored breathing, and beneath that, something quieter, the soft sound of people trying not to cry. Word rushed ahead of them, carried by radio first, then by phones, then by the strange, invisible channels that linked the valley. By the time they reached the small station, lights burned in more windows than usual. A few townspeople hovered outside, their shapes hesitant in the dark, not quite approaching, not quite going home. Inside, the girl's parents waited. Anna saw them through the glass before she stepped in. Two figures sitting too straight on hard chairs, hands clenched together as if they were the only thing keeping them from falling apart. Time had carved them smaller. Velkova spoke to them first, in a separate room. The walls were thin. Anna heard only fragments. Strong indication, items match, accident likely. And the quiet, keening sound that followed, raw and soft and terrible. Part of her wanted to flee, to let these people grieve without the presence of the stranger who lived above them in snow and rumor. But she also knew that if she left now, the story would feel unfinished in a way that would snag at her for years. Runo leaned against her knee, anchoring her to the floor. She stayed. When Velkova opened the door, her eyes looked older. "They want to see you," she said. "You don't have to, but they know. It was your dog, your call." Anna nodded, throat too tight for words, and stepped inside. The room felt suddenly too bright. The mother's face was washed out and swollen, eyes rimmed red. But there was a strange clarity in her gaze now that hadn't been there 5 years ago. The father looked as if someone had hollowed him out and left just skin and clothes and shaking hands. They both stood when Anna entered, unsteady. "You're Mountain Woman," the mother said, voice frayed but clear. "Anna," Anna corrected quietly, because somehow the name felt important now. "Anna," the woman repeated, letting it settle. She swallowed hard. "They said you called." Her words thinned. She tried again. "It was your dog." Runo stepped forward slightly, as if on cue, tail low. The mother's breath hitched. "Thank you," she said, and the words fell heavy between them, filling space Anna had expected to be occupied by blame. For seeing, for listening, for not letting them stay lost forever. Tears spilled again, but softer now. Anna shook her head on instinct. "It's late," she managed. "Too late." "Late," the father said hoarsely, "but not never." His voice scraped like gravel. He looked at Runo, then at Anna. "We prayed for miracles. We imagined monsters. We hated everyone who couldn't fix it. The not knowing." He trailed off, then forced himself on. "Now, we know. The mountain took them. Not..." He didn't finish. The absence of a human monster didn't erase pain, but it shifted its shape. "You brought them back," he said finally. "That matters. Whatever anyone says, that matters." The mother knelt slowly, joints protesting, and held out her trembling hands to Runo. He went to her, lowering his head so she could press her face into his fur, fingers clutching at his neck like he might hold her together. Sobs shook her shoulders, muffled against his warmth. He didn't move, didn't flinch, just breathed and blinked and accepted all that grief as if he had been bred for exactly this. In a way, he had. Anna watched, heart splitting and mending in the same beat. Here, at least, something she'd done had eased pain rather than caused it. Outside, later, the station's lights behind her, Anna leaned against the rough wall and let the cold night air scrape clean the edges of her thoughts. The mountains loomed dark beyond the town's weak glow, old silhouettes against a starless sky. Velkova joined her, hands stuffed into her pockets, shoulders hunched more from weight than weather. "You okay?" the inspector asked, though they both knew the answer was complicated. "I don't know," Anna said honestly. I thought it would feel better, knowing, for them, for me." She exhaled, watching it drift. "It just feels heavy, different heavy." "It usually does," Velkova replied. "Closure is a tidy word for something messy." She studied Anna's face in the dim light, But you did something no one else could. You saw what the mountain was trying to show. You trusted it enough to call. That's not nothing?" She hesitated. "Rescue's looking for volunteers," she added quietly. "People with instincts, dogs with noses like that. We could use you, not just when ghosts resurface, but before, to stop other families from sitting in that room." The offer hung in the air, fragile and dangerous and strangely right. Anna thought of years spent trying to disappear, of days measured in firewood and snow depth and the sound of wind. She thought of Runo pushing the glove toward her boots that morning, as if he'd decided the time for hiding was done. She imagined other paths, other searches, other mornings when a missing hiker's fate might depend on whether someone like her was willing to pick up a radio. The idea scared her. It also settled in her chest in a way that felt like a key turning. "I don't fit down here," she said quietly, almost apologetic. "Good," Velkova said. "We have enough people who fit. We need people who understand the mountain more than they understand paperwork." She pushed off the wall, straightening. "Think about it. No rush. The mountains aren't going anywhere." She stepped away, then glanced back once. "And Anna? 5 years ago, we should have listened harder. To you. I'm sorry we didn't." The apology landed deep, soothing an old, nameless sting. Alone again, Anna tilted her head back, staring at the dark shapes of the peaks. The story of the 2 missing girls had closed tonight. Not cleanly, not happily, but closed. When she and Runo finally started back toward the road that climbed home, the town's lights slowly fell behind them. Above, the sky was beginning to clear, a few reluctant stars pricking through the darkness. Snow crunched under their boots and paws, the familiar rhythm oddly comforting after so much talking and bright light. Halfway up, she paused at a bend where the valley spread below like a held breath. Somewhere down there, candles would be burning in 2 small windows, photographs propped on tables, families sitting together in their separate grief. Up here, the mountain exhaled slowly. Anna reached down and scratched Runo behind the ear. "You did well," she said softly. He leaned into her leg, content. The wind moved through the trees, no longer sounding like a warning, but something closer to acknowledgement. She didn't know yet if she would join the rescue team, if she could bear carrying other people's fear on her own narrow shoulders. But she knew this. She would keep listening. To the snow, to the shifts in ice, to the subtle unease in the air when someone was missing. The mountain had spoken to her, and this time she had answered.